Hello and welcome to the Cefesa President's Podcast. My name is Kirby Mallon. I am the president of Cefesa, and with us today we have Dan Dibeler, the president of K&D and Pine Tree Food Service. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Well, this year, new year, 2022. My podcasts are going to shift gears a little bit here. Historically, I've talking to people within the industry. We've just talked about business. What I'm planning on doing for the next couple podcasts is interviewing some of our board members to find out more personal things about you, Dan. Uh, you've been in this industry for some time, and some people know who Dan is, and a lot of people don't. So I guess I'll just ask you a series of questions, and let's see how this goes. So, welcome again. And the first thing I want to I know a lot about you, Dan. You and I have been cohorts in business for some time, uh, and we have different ways of doing business in certain fashions. But I've always respected how you've run your business, and I'm sure you've learned that. Uh, from somewhere prior to where you are now. So um, let's start with some basic things, Dan. Where were you? Where were you born? Where'd you come from?
I was born in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Um, Pretty much lived here my whole life, except for my 5 years in college. I definitely was not on the 4 year plan. I took my time and did the 5 years where I went to IUP. But for pretty much my entire life, I've lived in and around the Harrisburg area of
Okay.
Pennsylvania.
And then, so I assume you went to high school in that area.
Yes, I graduated from Susquehanna Township High School, class of '96. Um, PA state basketball champions that year. Um, and yep, and then I went to college, as I said, at IUP, which is Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Us from Pennsylvania know exactly what that is. Everybody else has nothing to do with Indiana University in Indiana. It's a state school for Pennsylvania in the town of Indiana, Pennsylvania.
Okay. And I assume you went to college to learn how to run a service company, fixing ovens.
No, I was actually political science pre-law with a minor in economics, and my concentration was in political administrative finance. My career goal was actually to be a lobbyist.
How about that? Well, many of the listeners know in your presentations that you know your numbers. That's for sure. So I guess that's where they came from. So what was your first job out of college, Dan?
Right out of college, I got recruited to Morgan Stanley, the big financial firm. I was a financial consultant, and I ran money for endowments, foundations, municipal pensions. It's a lot of big money that I was in charge of managing. I
Okay.
worked at Morgan Stanley for 5 years, switched firms to AG Edwards, which then became Wachovia, which then became Wells Fargo. So my running joke about my financial career is I worked for 5 different firms and changed jobs once.
How about that? And then and then at some point, is that when you came into the family business?
Yeah, so my mom and uncle were looking at future retirement. And this was back in '07, '08ish. And basically came to my sister and I, and we're like, we're looking to sell the company. If you have any interest, speak now or forever hold your peace. And I kind of positioned it as, it's always been in the back of my head, but it was never something that I really acted on. So I would be interested. I don't know what it would look like or how it would turn out. They made the decision that they were going to put the company up for sale. And of course, '07, '08 was a big financial turmoil. So it wasn't what we're going through right now where companies are selling like wildfire. They got no legitimate offers. Came back to me a few months later, and we put together a plan for me to come in. And I officially, when I say officially, actually on the payroll, and that started at K&D in December of 2009.
Okay. So K&D has been around for some time. If you go to the Cefesa website and you click about the history of Cefesa, you'll see a name in here, Spark Dixon.
Yes,
You want to tell them, our listeners, who that is?
sure. Spark Dixon is my great uncle. He started K&D in 1945, and it started as K&D clock repair. Um, and then once the 50s hit, and all the small electric appliances started coming out, like your electric can openers, toasters, blenders, things like that. Um, he started getting into fixing that, and the story we tell is how we got into fixing ovens. Is we were clock repair. First thing that fails on a residential oven is usually the timer. So we'd go out and have to fix the actual clock on the oven. And then when their element would go out, they'd be like, "Oh, who fixed it before?" K&D. So they called my uncle up. Be like, "Can you come out and look at our oven? You worked on it before," not thinking there's a big difference between the timer and an element. But my uncle figured it out and started fixing those. Um, so throughout those years, we were mainly small electrical appliance repair. Still did the clocks, and then in 1962, Toastmaster approached my uncle to take on their warranty for their Toastmaster line. And he said, "Oh, great. Sounds like an awesome plan. Let's move forward." They said, "Well, we want you to take on a commercial line too." At that point, my uncle was like, "I have no interest in commercial repair whatsoever." After a year or so back and forth, we did agree to do it. We signed on Toastmaster, which was our first commercial line. And then in 1971, we actually incorporated, and we're strictly 100% commercial.
It's super interesting that clocks led you to commercial ovens. So that was in 1962. In 1963 is when your great uncle, Spark Dixon, got together with some other people in the industry. One of them was Elmer Schultz, my grandfather, and they created what is known as Cefesa these days. And they did that back in Detroit, Michigan. And it's a really interesting story that that Spark Nixon was the treasurer,
Correct.
and Elmer Schultz, my grandfather, he was the second vice president at that point in time, but he ultimately became the president. So that's super interesting that both of our companies were so closely tied so long ago that created this association. That's super cool.
Yep. If you hold on 1 second.
Yeah.
I'm just pulling it off the wall and Charlie can edit it. Ooh. This is a picture of the NASD meeting in 1961, which is the National Appliance Service something. So it was a residential meeting. And these are all or most of the commercial guys that were there. And that's the group that ended up getting together and saying we need to have our own commercial association.
That's so cool. That's great. As I mentioned,
and that is Spark right there.
About that. That's awesome. Not many companies can tell a story like you just did, Dan. That's super very cool. Okay, and so you're on the board of directors now as the treasurer. You've been on the board for some time, Dan.
I'm back on since you became president is when I got reelected as treasurer. I had served my 4-year terms as a regular board member and got termed out for a year because there were no executive board positions available for that election. So I was on the board for 4 years, sat a year out, and then I got reelected in was that fall of 19 as treasurer.
Got it. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about you, Dan. So, what do you do for fun when you're not working?
In the winter, I snowboard, and in the summer, I offshore sport fish.
I do that, but
very
a lot of people.
Two very cheap hobbies.
Right. So, Snowboarding, how about that? So I knew that, but I'm sure the majority of our listeners did not. I assume you snowboard just around Harrisburg.
I snowboard actually all over the world now. I Where I live, there's a small 600-foot mountain that's 15 minutes from my house. It's where I grew up, where I learned. But I probably take about 5 or 6 trips every year around mostly North America. I've been to Europe. I actually have a trip planned to Chile in August to go snowboarding with my son. Every December, I take what I call my annual pilgrimage to Baldface Lodge, which is a backcountry lodge where there's no lifts, there's no grooming. We get out of lodge, we get in a snowcat. They drive up the hill, we ride down, they pick us up, and do it all over again.
That's so cool. So that's in the winter time, and then in the summer, you said you fish offshore
Yes.
uh, fishing. Um, I've done that a couple times with you, and we always seem to have fun. So tell our audience what that exactly entails, because a lot of people don't understand the length and the commitment to offshore fishing.
Yeah, well, the commitment for us for offshore fishing means we're real fishermen, unlike those Florida guys or the guys that live where the fishing grounds are a few miles offshore. So when we fish out of Jersey. We go to the canyons, which is on the continental shelf. Called the canyons because there's little notches that break into the continental shelf. Creates these things called eddies, which holds the phytoplankton and nutrients where the fish feed. So for us to get there, it's about a 4 hour steam out and a 4 hour steam back. So our normal fishing trip is we leave the dock at noon on a Saturday, steam all the way out there. We'll fish on troll, which means dragging bait, till sundown. Then we'll tie up and chunk, which if you ever watch Wicked Tuna, that's generally what they do. You throw out little pieces of bait and basically jig for them. Wake up and do that throughout the night. Then at sun up, troll all morning, leave the fishing grounds about noon, 1 o'clock, and get back to the dock about 5 or 6 o'clock the next day. So it's about a 30-hour trip.
Yep, sure is. And what's your favorite fish to catch?
And my favorite fish to catch is wahoo. Where we're at, they're few and far between. We normally get one or two a season. Other than that, we always target tuna. And then in tuna fishing, you'll get a bycatch of marlin every now and then, and dolphin or mahi mahi, as most of you know it on the menu.
Well, that's why your nickname is Big Tuna.
Correct.
Yep.
So I got that nickname from Pat Duffy when we were at an NSC meeting. So this meeting we were at, uh, the organizer, instead of doing a golf tournament like are normally done at the meetings, it was in Outer Banks, and he did a big fishing tournament. So between the whole group, there are 30 of us. We took out 6 boats, 5 people per boat, and my boat won the Calcutta, which is basically the gambling on fishing. We all threw in uh, money to see which boat caught the most fish and which boat caught the biggest fish. When we came back, I had brought in a 265-pound big eye tuna, which was the winner by about 40 pounds.
Yes, it was. It was a memorable fish.
It was.
Yep, it sure was. That was a good time. We should do that again sometime.
And then
So
on,
you mentioned your son or snowboarding with you. I assume the audience assumes you're married and you have kids, right, Dan?
yep, yep. My wife Courtney, most people know. And then I have 2 sons. They're currently 13 and 8. They both snowboard with me all the time. Are both competitive. My oldest, till all this COVID hit, he still holds his national ranking of 8th in giant slalom and 12th in slalom for snowboard racing. And then my youngest son just started racing last year, and we really didn't have any events last year because of the COVID impact. So hopefully this year he'll get his first rankings.
Got it. Well, that's super cool that you shared that with us and our audience here today, Dan. And so back to business for a minute. You've done some incredible things at K&D. That when you bought the business, I think the company was not doing nearly as well as it is now. Um, So let's talk to the audience about how you did that, Dan. I mean, if I know you came in there, I assume that you fired some people that weren't in the right spots. But what did you do? What was the sweet spot thing that you did in at K&D and also Pine Tree, I guess, that really elevated your company?
Well, the first thing when I first came in, um, I looked at everything, and I kind of was able to take an outside financial perspective from it of what's a profitable line of business, what's not profitable, why do we do this business if it's not profitable, or how do we make it profitable? And on that one, I picked on two big things: warranty and parts. Um, so of course, everybody knows about warranty where it was probably 10, 15 years ago. And we were still doing warranty work for extremely discounted rates because we didn't want to lose the part sales that we had already lost. Um, and I would just keep asking, why do we do this? Well, because we need the line. We need the line. And I would fight back with my executive team at that point and would pressure a lot of the manufacturers that kind of turned some heads. So it was really that outside perspective of just being like, because we've always done it that way is not an answer that I will accept. We need to find out how to do this. And if we're going to do it, how to be profitable doing it. And if we can't be, not to do it. The other thing I looked at is we had a lot of parts deals that were just unsustainable. Like, yeah, we were moving huge volumes of parts through the company still, but at virtually no margin. And the shipping deals that we were giving those customers basically ate up all the margin. So I had a customer that was doing $500,000 of part sales with us. We made $1,000 on it. And just the effort and overhead that it took to process all that, I was like, we can't do it anymore. And got kicked back. Well, we're going to lose this much in revenue. I'm like, no, we're going to lose $1,000 in revenue. We're going to lose $500,000 in sales. But I care about the profit line. And we're wasting a ton of resources doing that business and not making any money. So that was the first step. And then once I finally really took the helm, I wanted to change the culture of the company. For so long, my great uncle, my mom, and my uncle, they ran the company. They held everything so closely tighted. Nobody knew the business financials. Nobody knew what was going on, and nobody got rewarded. So if they worked harder, the mindset was, oh well, Carol and Ron or myself at that time, why am I working harder to make more money? So one of the things I changed was I put incentive plans in place for pretty much every employee in my company. And what it makes everybody feel is the better they do, the harder they work, the more they do, the more they get rewarded. So the better K&D does, the better every single one of my employees does. And that was really, I think, the sweet key there. That was the secret ingredient that really started ramping us up. And then as I started increasing the incentives, uh, as everybody knows from a closely held business, more profits also means more taxes. So I'm like, well, if we're being more profitable, I'm going to pay out more to my employees, and hopefully it'll level out my profitability for tax purposes. But the funny thing happened is the more I bonused out my employees and my managers, the more revenue and the more profits we brought in, and that's the continued stance that happens today.
Hmm. So, Dan, you were a pioneer in educating our listeners and the membership of what we call the fully loaded labor rate. Um, could you spend a couple minutes explaining that concept? Because I think a lot of people still just throw a dart at the board when they decide what their street rate's going to be, uh, or even discuss any kind of warranty rates.
Yeah, so I do in a payroll average to figure it out. So I take all my technicians, so any employee that's in production, meaning any billing employee, not somebody who's answering the phone and taking the call, but the guys that are actually production producing the revenue. Take their payroll, divide that out by how many ever there are. And that gives me my average payroll rate. Then you have to layer in a production multiple, a benefits multiple, and support staff multiple, um, and a few other things. So I have the formula. I can send it to anybody that wants it. Um, Once you do all that out, it gives you what your actual fully loaded cost per hour is. And then my street rate is generally 25 to 30% margin on whatever that cost is.
Right.
So,
And that's something you demonstrated very well at a conference not too long ago, where you to the entire membership, those were there, saw, in black and white, how you kind of laid this thing out. It was really eye opening, I think, for a lot of members.
and it's not only good for your street rate, it's also good for your warranty rates. Because when the manufacturer comes to you and says, well, we're only paying this, and you look and it's $2 less than it costs you, it makes it very simple for you to say no. It's not an emotional decision, it's a math decision. It costs me $87 an hour to run that call, and you want to pay me 85, doesn't work. It costs me $87 an hour to run that call, and you want to pay me 87, doesn't work either. We need a margin. So I treat manufacturers these days just like I would customers. High volume manufacturers do get a discount because of the volume. But if there's not the volume there, then the discount that I give to manufacturers is very limited because the discount they're receiving is they're not paying for parts. We might make 10% on the parts, whereas if it was a street rate call, we'd make 100% on the parts, 50% margin, which was another thing I did, the stocking parts cost
Right.
presentation, which is showed that we were in a losing end game when it came to stocking parts between what we made back on parts and what we had to stock.
Right. I remember way back in the day. I mean, I wasn't there, but you just told the story of Toastmaster being the first authorized company that you did warranty work for. That was the same for us too at Elmer Schultz and my grandfather. Everything was Toastmaster, and that's the line that he first picked up when he was doing warranty work. And the older companies like yours and mine typically tend to do more warranty work. If you had to do it all over again, would you do warranty work or not?
Back then, yes. I think there was a definite transition point right around the early 90s where things got out of balance and they were never corrected. And we're still working on getting them corrected today. I think last year was probably the first year we've got even close to getting that balance back right. Because back in the day, when we had all those part sales, it really didn't matter what the discount rate on labor was because we were making money on the parts. And that's what everybody wanted. And I think the manufacturers used that either intentionally or just out of how it happened. They would add more responsibility to us to process those warranties. So instead of us just sending an invoice to the manufacturer, that we would send the same invoice to a customer. Well, you have to do this now. You have to do this now. You have to do this now. And all our companies said, okay, we don't want to lose the parts. Okay, we don't want to lose the parts. Okay, we don't want to lose the parts. Then all of a sudden, we got back ended by the parts and lost them. Yet we're still required to do all these extra steps to process warranty and never had those labor rates addressed over the last 30 years. Like I said, I think last year was the first time we really saw that balance coming back, and that was because of the extraordinary situation of the inflation and where the cost of labor and the cost of goods went. But so going back, I would do it. I think I would have transitioned out earlier. I think I would have had a better vision of that trend that was coming down the line. So when I first started at K&D, we were doing about 43% of our volume was warranty. Last year, 13% of our volume was warranty.
Wow, that's a big difference. Well, you're
And
you're a numbers guy, Dan, and anybody in this membership who doesn't have a handle on specifically those fully loaded labor rates, that's a great asset that they have to come to you, Dan, and as you said, you would share that formula with our members. So you could reach Dan at Dan, I assume your email address is what, Dan?
is D Dibeler, that's D I, D as in boy, E as in Edward, Ler, at kdfsi.com.
Got it. Good stuff. Well, I do want to try to wrap this up, and I do have some fun questions for you. Before we get to that, Dan, do you have a 5 year plan? Do you have a 10 year plan at this point in time?
Yes. So I we do 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 years, and that's probably about as far as we've gotten. But we do. I have a guy just on staff that does all the forecasting, analytics, and strategies for me. So I basically come up with ideas of what we want to implement, and he actually puts it to paper of how we actually implement it. So for our forecast for December or for 2021 up at Pine Tree, we were 0.12% variation from what our forecast was at the beginning of the year.
Wow, that's
At
impressive.
K&D, we were 3.6% variation.
Good for you. Yeah, it's another thing that our listeners should do if you're not doing it now. Is as Dan said, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan. I don't personally recommend anything further than that because things had changed so quickly. But that's all good stuff that you learn when you're involved with Cefesa. When you're just a member of Cefesa and you don't attend any of the meetings or get to know any of the people, you don't learn the things that you and I have learned over the years by talking to our peers and bouncing things off of them. Like, hey, where do you buy your vans from? Do you buy or lease? And, we talk shop all the time at SFS meetings, at the meetings, and at the bar afterwards. And that's valuable information that you receive from your peers. And things are ever changing in our industry, as we could talk about right now with supply chain issues and you can't buy vans right now, and there seems always to be somebody wants to knock us down, and we've learned over the years, if you get knocked down, you just get back up and keep going.
Yep. I think the key is, I think all our companies for years, at least the old legacy companies like yours and mine, were successful in spite of ourselves for so many years that now the transition has become successful because of what we're doing, not just because there's always business out there.
Right, absolutely. Well, Dan, a couple quick fire questions at the end here for you. What's your favorite month of the year?
February,
Okay, and that's because snow
snow,
season.
snow season,
What's your favorite color?
blue.
I could tell. And what's your favorite food to eat for dinner?
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know if I can pick a favorite food that I eat. I can say that about the only thing I will not eat and I will refuse to eat is Brussels sprouts.
That's funny. And then wine, red or white?
Red. Well, you have to define that. Am I cooking or am I drinking it?
Okay, yeah,
White wine's for cooking, red wine's for drinking.
yeah, okay. Toilet paper, over or under?
Over. It's even in the
Always.
patent. It's even in the patent. Like, I don't know why this is an argument. There's a patent out there for the toilet paper roll holder, and it shows it coming over.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, Dan. Well, it's been my pleasure to talk to you today, Dan, and yeah, I always value your opinions and your leadership in Cefesa. You're a great treasurer. Just rolled out an excellent budget for 2022 for the association. And if you need any information, you can go right to the website of cefesa.com. You can go to the board of directors and you can reach out to Dan that way also, and myself. Again, Kirby Mallon here, the president of CEFESA, with the monthly podcast with Dan Dibeler from K&D and Pine Tree. Thanks again, Dan. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kirby. Have a great one.
Hey, you too, man.